Thank you. We're about to start the 2019 budget information session. This is a precursor to our town meeting, which is next Monday night. Hope everyone will be there. And this is an opportunity for both the advisory committee and the Neshoba Regional School District to just present their budgets one time ahead of that, to give some people an opportunity to see that ahead of the town meeting, and also go through the slides that we will be going through at town meeting as well. So first we will start with advisory. We've got Brian Boyle here, chairman of the advisory committee, who will do his presentation, and then we have Superintendent Brooke Clenchy here to present the Neshoba Regional School District budget. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to Brian.
Okay, thanks so much, Doug. All right, we're going to try to get through this in about 10 minutes, and this is virtually what the town meeting will be seeing a week from tonight. The first slide is the overall summary of the operating budget for FY 2020. You'll see that the operating budget is $24.9 million, which is an increase of 5.87% over last year. And the operating budget reflects basically the regular expenses necessary to maintain municipal services. The next slide shows you total budgeted expenditures for FY 2020, which includes the operating budget plus capital items and other spending articles. That's $25.6 million for an increase of 5.11 over last year. This shows you the sources of revenue for 2020. Our revenue sources don't really change much from year to year, but what we wanted to show by categorizing things in this manner was that the town is still largely reliant on property taxes as the main source of revenue. If you go down a little bit on the table, you'll see that we have only 1% of our revenue from state aid, and then about 5.7% in local receipts. This is a visual depiction of pretty much the same information, but just so everybody understands, when you're looking at local receipts, that includes things like the vehicle excise tax, fees, licenses, and the meals tax, which was approved last year. This slide also breaks out, so you can see it, the difference in residential property taxes versus commercial, industrial, and personal property taxes. But when you combine those two sources of revenue, it's almost 92% of all the money that we get to pay for the operating budget. This is an overview of total expenditures for FY 2020, which we've lumped into main buckets. You'll see education, which includes both Neshoba and Minuteman, is 63.4% of expenditures. Below that are the salary and wages for all of the town departments. So that's non-education, but things like DPW, police, fire, town hall. That's 13.9% of expenditures. And then going down a little bit to insurance, benefits, and retirement, that's 5.5%. So those three things alone, the education, the salary and wages, and the insurance, benefits, and retirement, is almost 83% of the operating budget, and we have very little discretion when it comes to those things. The other areas where advisory does have some scope to kind of tweak is the town department's other operating category, which is 9.4% of the expenditures. And then down below, the last row, capital appropriations and warrant articles. Those are the spending articles where we consult with capital planning and the department heads. And when you add everything together, that's the $25.6 million total budgeted expenditures. This is just another way of looking at the 2020 operating budget. The slices of the pie that you're seeing here are virtually identical to the slices of the pie last year. Basically, public safety, public works, culture and recreation, education, those have not really changed much as a percentage of the operating budget, so that's staying pretty consistent. This slide shows the major operating budget changes from last year to this year. Just wanted to call out a couple of things. So under the education, which again is both Neshoba and Minuteman, the Minuteman assessment was another significant increase, as a percentage far more than what we got from Neshoba. We're hoping that that levels off soon. Public safety, the increase there is largely attributable to the fact that we now have a full-time fire chief who's being budgeted for a full year, so we anticipated that. Public works increase, one of the biggest things in there, which we have very little control over, is the fact that the transfer station is incurring a lot of costs in recycling. It used to be a money maker, and now you actually have to spend money to complete our recycling obligations. And then benefits and insurance, increase of 11.16%. That's huge, and it's not only health insurance that's gone up a lot, our OPEB assessment went up, and our pension assessment went up significantly. And those are three things that, health insurance we tweak from time to time, but when it comes to the pension assessment and the OPEB, it's just what the actuaries tell us. This slide just briefly goes over all of the capital items for 2020, and we can talk more about those as they come up at annual town meeting, but this is just all in one place for everyone to see them. One thing to note is that Articles 19 and 20 are both related to the Wattaquatic Hill Road culvert. Number 19 is engineering to replace the failed culvert, and number 20 is a $20,000 emergency protective measure to kind of get it through while we come up with the engineering for a more permanent fix. We've sort of covered a lot of the significant factors already when I was discussing some of the major operating budget increases. I did want to just point out, though, that this is in the second bullet. We were initially facing a deficit of almost half a million dollars. Like last year, we went through a pretty aggressive exercise of reducing and deferring some spending, but even after that was complete, the town is still using $287,000 of free cash to balance the budget. And that, as a practice, is not something we can continue year over year. It's disfavored by not only the Department of Revenue, but also our own internal financial policies. And so that's something we want to keep a close eye on. I've already mentioned the public safety budget increase and the employee and retiree benefit increases. I do want to note that for all of the capital items, we are funding those with free cash or other available funds, which is something that we try to do to keep our debt service low. The only thing that we'll partially borrow for is Article 18, which is the drainage and flood control improvements, South Bolton and Spectacle Hill Road for $250,000. And a bit of good news, the debt service decreased 3.62%, in part because we were able to refinance a portion of the debt with our new bond rating. Last year, we showed you our financial policy targets, and we met all of those targets last year. This year, we met all of them except for the second one, which is to maintain a free cash balance of at least $350,000 heading into the next fiscal year. So we're significantly below that, which puts us at risk for having, if you go back up to the first item, achieve a certified free cash of 3 to 5% of total budgeted expenditures. We're at risk of not achieving that because we're starting FY 2020 with such a low free cash balance. So again, we're going to have to keep an eye on that. This is just a quick snapshot showing FY 2019 versus FY 2020. As you'll see, last year at this point, we ended with $353,000, which is just above our $350,000 target. This year, we're significantly below that. Wanted to call out a new revenue possibility. The local option rooms tax is, we already have a local room occupancy excise tax of 2%, but if the town accepts Article 14, this would allow us to increase the tax to 6%. And obviously, that's for people that are staying in Bolton, and it's not Bolton residents, which means that we're distributing the tax burden a little bit better. This slide was a collaboration with the assessors. It shows the FY 2020 estimated tax rate. Keep in mind that the actual amounts won't be finalized until December 2019. But you see, not only there's going to be a change in average property value, the tax rate will be going up to $21.09. And the average single-family tax bill is going to go up about $537. We'll cover this just in the next slide. This shows that Bolton continues to rely heavily on residential taxes as compared to commercial, industrial, and personal property. And so we're always interested in seeing if there's a way to kind of bring up the other sources of revenue. And then the next two slides, as we did last year, they just, again, show 2 points in time how education continues to put some pressure on the town's budget. So back in 2003, education was 57.5% of the town's overall spend. And in 2018, which is the last year we have DOR data for, it's 63.6. And just one other way of looking at it, you can kind of see that the rate of increase for education is higher than the rate of increase for all other town spending. So that's something that all stakeholders need to just continue to talk about, because if that trend were to continue, it just continues to put more pressure on the town side. And that's it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian. Very good. Did you time yourself? I didn't time you. About 10 minutes?
I think it was about 10
Good.
minutes.
Okay. Lorraine, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you so much. Can you go back a slide or two?
That
So,
one?
yeah, do you, I mean, obviously, I know what the Neshoba Regional School District's increase in percentage is assessment to the town, but I don't have an understanding of what the Minuteman increase is, both in dollars per pupil and in the percentage. So, do you have that?
I do for the past 2 years. And I don't think I have it broken out before that, because before 2 years I was just using DOR, which has a lump education number. But like last year, the assessment for Minuteman was like upper double digits. I want to say it was like 15 or 16%. Does that sound right, Don?
It does sound right. I know this year it was 8.4, but I
Yeah.
don't remember what it was last year.
Yeah, I mean, my point is not, I'm just trying to, I think if we have to be fair to both Minuteman, I mean, they've gone through almost like a re-emergence as far as, redefining whether it's the physical building and the programs and that kind of thing. And our district, I just think we have to, I would love to see that education chunk broken out into the district and Minuteman. Because I think that would tell a story too. I just think people should know what it is,
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
right?
Yep.
Because at some point, we're probably going to see something along the lines of, what Minuteman's going through with the build.
Right.
So as things start to migrate, I think we should probably separate them out so that you have this chunk, that chunk, and all together it's education.
Yep.
Thank you.
That's a good idea.
Thanks. Any other questions on the advisory budget portion? Seeing none, we'll move on
To
to
the school district.
Neshoba Regional School District.
We do not have slides up
Superintendent
here. I'm not sure what happened, but we did get our slides to.
You did
Thank
get
you.
them to us.
But I do have copies tonight of the slides, so they won't be up there, but I do have copies here, and feel free to grab some.
Would it help if I held the slides up for the camera?
I think that's probably okay. We can run through it pretty quickly here. It's interesting, I was thinking how many similarities there were as I was listening to Brian speak between the town and the school district. And if you take a look at the first slide that's got the pie, you basically see the exact same sort of thing that Brian was speaking to from the town's perspective. If you take a look at our 66% for salaries and our 16% for benefits as your 82%, it leaves you with 18%. Basically what you use as discretionary money. For you, you're doing capital items, and for us, we're buying supplies for the classrooms. So there's not a lot, as you say, a lot of wiggle room there. I do want to say too, just quickly, I want to thank again our town administrators who are just amazing to work with in all 3 of our communities. You'll see that the school district, if you're taking a look at that same page, the school district percentage change is 2.99% this year. So just under 3%. We worked very, very closely with our town administrators, with our school committee, with our administrative team collectively to whittle it down to that 2.99. Just in general, of course, the school committee has asked that they always see what is completely brought to the superintendent's office for the purposes of budget right at the very beginning. And so in December and January, that's what we do. We bring the whole thing in. But we all know that we can't have an 8.7% or 9% increase in budget. But that gives us a benchmark, and then we start to whittle it down after a lot of discussion and prioritizing in conjunction particularly with our district improvement plans and our school improvement plans as to what our top priorities are, and that's how we come to a number. In that process, we also look to our 3 communities. Our communities don't drive the budget. Our district and the needs of our children drive the budget, but we're not foolish. We know that we can't bring a budget forward, or shouldn't be bringing a budget forward that can't be passed in our 3 communities. So last year it was really Lancaster's situation that drove us to get to the final number. This year it was actually Bolton that drove us to eventually get to a number that we felt we could all live with. So overall budget, as you can see, the dollar increase was 1.619697. Again, remembering that just over 80% is our salaries and benefits. And those are contractual, of course. So again, we don't have a lot of wiggle room with that. On the next page, and I won't spend a lot of time on numbers because I know that everyone has seen all of these numbers. Our budget books are out. Our budget pamphlets are out. We've had many discussions with the school committee over and over again. So I think the people have seen these numbers right from where they started to where they ended. So I won't focus a lot on that. If you take a look in the middle of the next page where it says budget overview and Bolton assessment, you'll see right in the middle of the page, if you take a look over to the far side, the increase for this year was 4.87. What I found of interest, if you take a look at the chart just below, is it was actually 4.87% last year as well. So the numbers were identical this year. The other thing, and this actually goes back to Brian's discussion with your free cash, I'm going to kind of equate that, but they're not exactly the same to our E&D fund. And we're in a position of trying to get off of that hamster wheel. We had a forensic audit done a couple of years ago, you'll recall, and that was one of the things that came up, is this is something that we need to do. And the school district has, in essence, borrowed from that fund and put back when it can, borrowed from it, put back, and ideally, it should be over here, almost like your free cash. You only go into it for those one time, not the ever turning budget cycle. So we started in FY17, you'll see that's where we started to track. Before that, though, I would tell you at one point in time it was as high as 1.2 million, 1.3 million. 1.0 million in 17, 1.0 million in 18. You'll see in 19 we brought it down to 800,000. This year we're at 750. So we're trying to get it down. I mean, in a perfect world, in about 3 to 5 years, we'd like to see that at about 200 to 300,000 in a perfect world. So that's the money that we're taking out of E&D to help our budget, just as you've taken the free cash and to help your budget this year. Over the page. Key budget impacts. This is an interesting page if you take a look at it. The districts-wide salaries, now keep in mind when you take a look at the percentage change, it's 5.01. In there, of course, are your steps and lanes in your regular teacher salaries. We had a couple of ads, and I'll take a look at that in a few minutes. For example, Hale School, we put in a 0.4 assistant principal position, and so there are a couple of those. There's also 2 nursing positions that we have received grants for previously, and those grants fell off this year, but we have to have those positions. They're mandated, and we wouldn't want it any other way anyway. So you'll see that those positions have been picked up, so I'll speak to that in a minute. So when you look at the 5.01%, please don't think that that was an increase in salaries, just in general. That's not all what it is. There are a myriad of factors that go into that. The employee insurance and benefits is down 6.27%. There were a couple of factors that went into that, and I'll explain a little bit more later on, but unlike the town, you had quite an increase this year. We actually didn't, and so that was a real saving piece for us. Special education is down 14%. This was nothing that was mandated or suggested by leadership. This is just how it played out this year. We have a fantastic director of pupil and personnel services, and Joan DeAngelis, who is incredibly creative. She's begun several new programs in our district, and so we've had several children return to our district who have otherwise been placed out of district. And so there was a natural savings by that. That wasn't something that was forced or anything like that. It was one of those common sense things. We've got X number of kids who are already outplaced for this particular disability. Wait, if we bring them all back in, train our own staff appropriately, bring the specialization in, we can take care of them ourselves. And it's been very, very successful. So that's why you see that number. Transportation for both regular and SPED, 1.4, that's not that big. The grants and revolving funds, there's an increase of almost 2% with that, so we're happy with that. Over the page, there it is again. I have to stop saying that.
No, it's fine.
It's my fault. It's a saying, I need to stop doing that. If you take a look, perhaps by town meeting, I will have the slides and I won't be talking about the pages in front. Over to the left, there are the proposed staffing changes. For example, if you go down to the last two positions, there are the two school nurse positions I was talking about that had been previously picked up in grants that are no longer available to us. So we had to put those into the budget. Then there's also a couple of other positions. For example, the .2 business teacher. That was a business teacher already in the high school who's at .8. The demand was great. We were able to bump that position into a full-time position, for example. So part of those smaller positions, the .2, .6, .6, were positions that we have the need for because of the numbers in our classrooms at the high school. So it made sense just to bump those positions to full FTEs. So that's what that is. Over on the right, the initiatives. Of course, the Chromebook initiative, we kind of wrap that up in this current year. We'll expand on that only from the perspective of professional development and what we can do with that. Next year was very successful, very, very smooth rollout. This year we also had digital learning focus, primarily at the middle school, but we did expand out both ways to the elementary and up to the high school. Some amazing things happening at the high school right now with digital literacy as well. We brought 2 staff members in who work in our office, who are teachers in the classroom, but work at central office 2 days in a 6-day cycle, and they've just done some amazing things with the digital literacy this year. It's been fabulous. They're the ones who were behind the technology tastings that happened in each of the schools and all that kind of thing. The genesis started with these 2 individuals, so that's worked very well for us. We will continue the early literacy initiative. This is year 4 of 5, so we're closing in on the end of that commitment. We feel that that's been an exceptional initiative. STEM ongoing. Social studies, we have brand new frameworks and standards that have just come out, and so we are going to go into a full-scale social studies review. The high school, the SOI, we've done a resubmission. Just want to remind everyone that we submitted last year, the school committee authorized the superintendent to submit last year, and then in December we heard that we weren't queued up, we weren't invited in this year, but we were encouraged to resubmit, and they felt that the SOI that we submitted was very strong, and when they came to do the tour of the building, that just really cemented things with the SOI, because it was very clear that we have some major issues in that building right now, and they're going to cost big dollars because we're having nothing small happen anymore. Everything that's going wrong is going wrong at $250,000 or $300,000. So, and the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, clearly sees that. So we have resubmitted, the school committee authorized to do a resubmission. We have done that, so we look forward to hearing something in December again this year. Social emotional learning initiatives, we dipped our toes in the water a bit on this current year, but you'll see when we roll out our district improvement plan, we are looking at a 2-year plan, and social and emotional learning initiatives are the key in the next 2 years. The first year is really with a focus on staff, the second year is a focus on staff and students. So in essence, how you can think of it is that the first year is to help train our staff, the second year is to roll it out. Offsets and efficiencies, we continuously look for district-wide staff realignment. We've done quite a lot of that in the last 3 years. That will continue, and a lot of times it's just, again, the common sense factors. For example, we had one position that was just through natural attrition. We were losing at one elementary building. Another elementary building needed that position. It wasn't the teacher, it needed that position. We, through natural attrition, took the position away in this building, but over here, we were able to put it in place. So wherever we can make alignments throughout the district, we consistently do that. We also always look at the numbers of our students in classes, so that's ongoing. Strategic planning, we will continue to fund our OPEB trust. We're not like you know, in terms of, I don't think we'll ever get to where we should be fully funded for our OPEB, but we continue to work away at it. And we put some, I think, some very nice funding in it last year, and we're set to put additional funding into it this year. We continue to resource our grants effectively. Last year we were able to find one particular grant, for example, where if we used it a little bit differently, we were actually able to save more money with just through resourcing of it, and so we've done that. We're always looking at how we can resource our grants the most effective and most efficient way. Facilities is ongoing. We have regular maintenance cycles now, and it's one of those things you either pay up front or you pay behind. We're wanting to pay up front right now with these buildings and make sure that they are on regular maintenance programs, and that's working very well for us. Health insurance review, we did a full-scale review this year. We had a very large committee that met. We did an RFP out, brought that all in, then we didn't have a lot of insurance companies jump on board and want to do that. I was kind of surprised by that. But the top couple came in, they did individual interviews and listening and learning sessions with our staff, and then whittled it down to where it's at right now, but we did a full-scale review on that. If we can turn to the next page, please. District areas of focus, again, I won't spend much time on that. I spoke already about the technology and digital literacy, that's ongoing. Social emotional, ongoing. Facilities, needs, potential feasibility study. We always want to make sure that if we remind folks that if we get queued up, that their feasibility study will follow that. Proposed stabilization fund for free full-day kindergarten. I've spoken a number of times about free full-day kindergarten, and I spoke again the other night with our Board of Selectmen. I believe I spoke with the advisory group as well about that. If you've been watching our school committee meetings, you'd see it, that it was discussed there as well. One of the things we're looking for with this upcoming town meeting is that we establish a stabilization fund that is just specific for the free full-day K. We have a gap year that we are going to have to pay for where we don't get reimbursement from the state, nor do we get tuition. So we have to have the money in the bank in order to get through that gap year. But after that gap year, we'll very likely receive more through reimbursement than we are through tuition right now. So it makes complete sense that we ultimately land there. We have to get through that 1 year, so that's why the stabilization fund is there. Safety and security measures are ongoing, of course. We had a full comprehensive review done last year of all of our buildings. We've gotten all of those reports in, and we continue to pick away at them, and that's what's actually ending up in a lot of our capital planning sheets right now that have gone out to our communities. Communication plan we established last year, as well as a digital literacy plan. Those are ongoing. The district improvement plan and school improvement plans, if you're watching our meetings at all, you see that that all ties together right now, and that really helps to drive our budget process. And the facility compliance, of course, is a natural that we do. The last sheet that's on there is just a sheet to show you the NRSD cost per pupil versus the state average. The state average, of course, is in the dark green, and the cost per pupil for Neshoba is in the light green, but it gives you a flavor of where we are at this point in time. So just a bit of a recap then on the second page for the budget overview. The total budget, $55,733,801, and Bolton's share is that $14,673,318 number. that's it.
Thank you, Superintendent.
I don't know if there are any questions out there that I can entertain or not, or if we wait till town meeting.
I think we'll wait till town meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, that's
Yeah,
right.
15.
You're right, I did, yes, it's 50 million, thank you very much for doing that. Can I just do that? The total assessment for Bolton is 15,388,593. Thank you for catching that.
Good, good. All right, well, thank you very much,
My pleasure.
Superintendent Clancy, and thank you, Brian. Thank you to the advisory committee and the school committee for all your hard work on these budgets. Thank you to Don Lowe, our town administrator, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone next Monday at 7 o'clock at the school for town meeting. Thank you.
Just one quick question.
Yes.
In regard to the advisory question, the proposed stabilization fund for free full-day kindergarten was not unanimous, the vote on that, correct?
That's correct.
And so I wondered what were the reasons that it was not unanimous?
Yeah, so there are 6 members on advisory, and the vote was 4-2. I think one of the 2 people who dissented is here, and I don't want to speak for him, but the other person who wasn't here, it was largely about the move to full 3-day kindergarten philosophically, not just about the funding mechanism. So I think, Ted, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the article or the motion was lacking detail and information. Actually, a summary, which you think to be a subset of the motion, had more information than what we were voting on. And we weren't aware that full day kindergarten had been voted on and approved. So to fund something that hasn't been voted on, at least to our knowledge, 2 of us, gave us pause. So that was some of the reasons. And when you set up a fund, there was no dollars per year going into it, no cap, no, what if we have the fund and full-day kindergarten isn't authorized? What happens to the money? Yeah, it seemed to lack detail. So for that reason, we voted against it. Right? My colleague, some of those reasons.
Thanks. Thanks for that answer, Ted. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you coming, and thanks very much for the presentations. That will be very helpful, and we'll see everyone at town meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.